You think you know what anger looks like? Picture this: the guy is just chilling at a bar when some random person strolls up and decides to blindside Andre with a cheap shot. Big mistake. To the global fan base, this man was the legendary Andre the Giant. But here's the thing about the eighth wonder of the world that you need to understand. He wasn't always a gentle giant. The man had a serious dark side, especially if he felt disrespected in the ring, like that time he got pinned by the Ultimate Warrior. It took a lot to set him off, but once you crossed that line, it was pure destruction. Witnesses described total chaos, with Andre getting so fed up that he reportedly told three guys right then and there that their careers were over. Today we're breaking down the top 5 moments where the big man simply had enough and went rogue. These aren't scripted storylines. We're talking legitimate meltdowns, like the time he ripped out camera cables right after the bell rang. You won't believe the aftermath of that little incident. Stick around for the #1 spot, because it involves a legendary night where Andre allegedly stuffed 2 guys into a car trunk and slammed the lid shut. Talk about finding yourself in a tight spot with zero way out. Andre didn't need an introduction. Everyone back then knew exactly who was in charge, often referring to him simply as the boss. If you were on his bad side, your best bet was to keep your distance, because when the giant went off the rails, nobody was safe. Smash that like button if you want to see who Andre tosses next. Now, let's kick things off with #5, and a specific warning that most wrestlers knew better than to ignore. The rule was simple: absolutely zero baby oil. It was common knowledge backstage that Andre had a list of people he couldn't stand, mostly guys who didn't show proper respect for the industry. He controlled everything in that ring. If he didn't want to be lifted or didn't want you to land a move, you were simply out of luck. His sheer size and power meant he could physically shut down anyone who tried to go against the script. Andre acted as the locker room enforcer, reminding everyone that their job was to entertain the crowd, not to act like tough guys in real life. Anyone wandering in with an ego check was promptly humbled by the big man. Throughout his career, a handful of superstars managed to get under his skin. However, nothing compared to the genuine animosity he held for the Macho Man, Randy Savage. The hatred was mutual and intense, with peers often chuckling whenever they saw Randy was scheduled to face the giant. Savage would constantly stress out, knowing Andre was going to make his life miserable in the ring. The core issue was Savage's ritual of oiling up before a bout, a practice that absolutely disgusted Andre, as confirmed by Savage's brother Lanny Poffo. Even though Andre loathed the slick stuff, Randy refused to quit, arguing that just as Andre's brand was his size, the oil was part of the Macho Man package. It became a battle of wills, with neither man willing to budge, leading to serious friction. Randy would often complain about Andre's attitude, but most people just didn't want to get involved in the drama. Savage would intentionally wait until the final moments before the match to slather himself in oil, fully taped and ready to provoke. He'd walk in acting innocent, trying to discuss the match strategy with Andre as if nothing was wrong. Andre wouldn't even look up from his card game, simply barking at him to get out and wash off the oil. The grease wasn't the sole source of tension, though, according to other locker room sources. Rumor has it Andre despised how possessive Randy acted toward Miss Elizabeth, a sentiment Hulk Hogan remembers clearly. Hogan described moments where Andre seemed to be punishing Savage in the ring on Elizabeth's behalf, physically dominating him. The beatings were severe enough to shock onlookers, proving just how much Savage had agitated the giant. He was completely done with Savage's attitude, but if you think the oil dispute was bad, wait until you hear #4. Savage at least knew his place in the pecking order. The next guy on our list was entirely different. Enter Bam Bam Bigelow, the fiery heavyweight from Asbury Park, New Jersey. Bigelow was notorious for his attitude, ignoring backstage politics and showing little regard for the established hierarchy. He didn't mind burning bridges, but that confidence became a problem when he ran into the boss. When the Beast from the East met Andre, everyone expected fireworks. Bigelow was a massive athlete in his own right, standing 6'4" and weighing nearly 400 pounds. He joined the Federation in 1987 and was set for stardom, but destiny had other plans. That promising run hit a brick wall barely a year later, simply because he made the fatal error of ticking off Andre. It all came to a head during a live event at the famous Madison Square Garden. Insiders say Andre viewed Bigelow as a toxic influence and decided it was time to school the rookie on respect. As soon as that opening bell clanged, the crowd sensed the vibe shift immediately. This wasn't going to be a standard performance. You have Andre, the absolute massive legend, cornering this guy against the ropes and just using his size to dominate the space. Andre leaned in and basically told the rookie he was way too inexperienced to be acting like a star, letting him know he had a lot to learn about respect. It was a hard lesson in humility, with Andre physically punishing him in the ring to drive the point home he was throwing real weight behind those shots. For Bam Bam Bigelow, it was a total disaster. The company had big plans for him, but management's opinion of him nosedived pretty fast. Bigelow ended up paying a heavy price mostly because his attitude rubbed the veteran locker room the wrong way. Once he finally survived the beating in the ring, Bam Bam didn't stick around to chat. He stormed straight to the back, threw his gear in a bag, and walked out of the arena without a word. He wouldn't be seen in the Federation for months, though he'd later confess that taking a beating from Andre was exactly what he needed. It was a harsh reality check delivered right when his ego was getting completely out of control. The veterans made it crystal clear that he needed to check his attitude and pay his dues before acting like he owned the place. He was just too green to be making demands, and everyone knew you didn't mess with Andre inside the squared circle. But honestly, Andre's power behind the curtain was even more terrifying than his presence in the ring. If the Giant decided you crossed a line, the consequences were instant, and one specific story proves just how much pull he really had. This single moment completely altered the trajectory of 3 careers and showed everyone who really ran the show. Back in the mid-1980s, the locker room dealt with an invasion by a trio of loud partying rebels known as the Fabulous Freebirds. These guys were absolute icons in Texas, but once they hit the big leagues, they became notorious for being totally unprofessional. They were constantly blowing off events or showing up late, and legends like Bret Hart watched the chaos unfold with disbelief. Hart recalled his very first day with the company, witnessing the madness firsthand at the airport. When the crew arrived at LaGuardia, the Freebirds were passed out cold right in the middle of the gate area. They were sprawled out so badly that the flight crew couldn't even get to the jetway door to prep the plane. Because they were completely out of it blocking the entrance, they ended up missing the flight entirely while everyone else boarded. They finally rolled into the arena about an hour after call time, spinning some weak story to explain their tardiness. It was obvious to everyone that they had been partying way too hard and were still feeling the effects. As the unspoken boss of the locker room, Andre decided he had seen enough disrespect when the guys wandered in acting like nothing happened. He was absolutely livid, standing up to confront them the second they walked through the door, telling them flat out that they were done. He fired all 3 on the spot, sick and tired of their lack of punctuality and the fact that they kept getting away with it. He shut down their excuses immediately, making it clear that their time was up. Michael Hayes, who never backed down from a fight, got right in the Giant's face, insisting Andre didn't have the rank to fire him. Hayes started shouting that Andre wasn't in charge, but the Giant simply told him that management would have the final say by morning. He gave the office an ultimatum: it was either the Freebirds go or Andre goes. Sure enough, the trio received their termination papers the very next day, proving you don't bet against the Giant. With just one move, Andre used his massive influence to cut one of the hottest rising teams completely out of the picture. He was a consummate professional, and he had zero tolerance for anyone who treated the business like a joke. Before we get to the next insane story about the wildest bar fight ever, smash that like button if you think Andre was the ultimate boss of wrestling. You definitely want to stick around for this next part because the details are absolute madness. Flashback to the late 1970s, where a rowdy group of wrestlers took over a bar in Florida after a grueling schedule. The atmosphere was heavy with smoke-stale beer and the noise of furniture dragging across the floor. Andre was holding court in the corner, hunched over a tiny table, laughing with his crew and downing drinks like they were nothing. He was fiercely loyal to his friends, but if you weren't in that inner circle, you were better off keeping your distance. The man valued his privacy and had no problem isolating himself if he wasn't in the mood for company. The rule was simple: if the Giant didn't like you, you stayed far away for your own safety. As the story goes, he was enjoying his night until a wrestler named Blackjack Mulligan walked through the door. Now, Mulligan was a massive human being in his own right, standing tall and taking up a lot of space. He stood 6'8", weighed over 300 pounds, and had a hair-trigger temper that could snap at a moment's notice. And then there was always that intangible factor, you know, what people nowadays call street cred. So, apparently Mulligan steps up to Andre, and he wasn't flying solo. I forget who his wingman was, but when that 6'9" Texan arrived, he had backup. Turns out it was Dick Murdoch with him, and the two of them were trying to stiff Andre on some cash. Andre basically told them to meet him at the bar, so the two conspirators huddled up and decided they'd just march in there and take the big man down. They strolled in and tried to ambush the giant, but let's just say the plan fell apart immediately. Andre, just chilling with a drink, suddenly hauled off and landed a massive sucker punch. Wham! He proceeded to absolutely dismantle both of them, just beating the living daylights out of the pair. Andre landed another devastating blow, and this is where the legend forks into two very different tales. According to the nature boy Ric Flair, who witnessed the chaos, Andre dragged the two guys out to the beach and started dunking them in the ocean, one in each massive hand. Mulligan and Murdoch were flailing around in the surf until the giant finally decided they'd had enough. They were left soaking wet, rattled, and completely embarrassed. But Jake the Snake tells a totally different story. In Jake's version, Andre tossed both guys right through a window, flagged down a taxi, and stuffed them into the trunk. He slammed the lid and told the driver to haul them off to the emergency room. Nobody knows for sure which account is 100% accurate, but everyone agrees on what happened next. Legend has it that Andre simply sat back down, ordered another round, and went right back to his card game. However, the drama didn't stop at the hotel bar. Later on, Mulligan actually broke character on national television, bringing up the legitimate brawl during an interview with Mean Gene. He started rambling about how he could barely speak, hinting that the real-life beating was the cause. He complained that the big man was punching him in the throat and recounted how he tried to invite Andre to a spot called the Rock Inn. Mulligan described getting smashed over the head with about 4 quarts of Jack Daniels before he finally started fighting back. He claimed he had the giant furious, but admitted he couldn't take any more hits to the nose or eye. He wrapped it up by saying he was the only sparring partner Andre had left in the world, but confessed he wasn't sure how much longer he could survive the beatings. That covers 4 wild incidents, and now we've reached the top spot. This moment was so chaotic, the police had to intervene. Please hit that like button if you want the Giant's legacy to live on forever. And this time, the fallout for Andre extended way past the wrestling ring. It all went down in August of 1989 in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. A 43-year-old Andre, whose health was deteriorating, was facing off against the Ultimate Warrior in the main event. Ringside, a cameraman was filming the audience. Earlier that day, he'd gotten the green light to shoot parts of the event for a local news segment. However, part of the deal was a strict rule: do not film Andre's match. The bout itself was quick, with Warrior defeating the 8th wonder of the world in under 60 seconds. But the real action kicked off after the final bell rang. The Giant spotted the cameraman, and while the details are debated, things went south fast. The consensus is that Andre thought the guy was filming him illicitly, and that was the spark that lit the powder keg. With 4,000 fans watching in shock, Andre snatched the camera and tried to rip it right out of the guy's grip. The cameraman, who was only about 5'9" and 160 pounds, held on for dear life, which just made the Giant more furious. Andre ended up destroying the camera and swatting the poor guy around like he was nothing. Arena security rushed in, pulling the man to safety while ushering Andre backstage. Police swarmed the scene, but within seconds, the reality of the situation hit them. If Andre decided not to cooperate, they were staring down a very long, very difficult night. One officer later joked that their only backup plan was to ask the Ultimate Warrior to come back out and pin him again. Reports say when officers told the Giant he was under arrest, Andre simply growled and refused to move. The sergeant on duty decided to play it cool. He kept his composure and spoke to Andre man to man. He explained to the Giant that they needed to go down to the station to sort things out. He promised the process would be simple and quick. Fortunately for the officers, the gentle approach worked. After a bit of grumbling, Andre finally agreed to accompany them to the precinct. But he had one non-negotiable condition: there was no way he was wearing handcuffs. Realizing standard cuffs were a joke on wrists that size, the sergeant had to improvise with a set of leg irons. He held them up with a smirk, joking he'd only clamp them on if Andre forced his hand. That cracked the big guy up, and with the tension gone, they walked the Titan out of the arena. The parking lot presented a logistical nightmare because standard police cruisers aren't built for Giants. They finally managed to wedge him into the front seat of a Ford Crown Victoria. Even then, he was folded up like a pretzel head, scraping one window and knees jammed against the other. Booking was just as tricky. His fingerprints were so massive they spilled right off the standard cards. By all accounts, the wrestling icon was a total gentleman while in custody. He chatted with the officers and signed autographs. The chief later admitted they were just relieved he went quietly. A man that size could have dismantled the station, and technically the 8th wonder did cause some destruction. To the tune of $300 to be precise. That's not counting the whiplash and back strain the cameraman allegedly suffered. You have to feel for the guy just 23, totally green and terrified of losing his job in the chaos. Apparently, he agreed not to film the ring action, but the camera was rolling anyway. Andre felt double-crossed, so when the bell rang, he ripped the cables out and things got ugly fast. It was a chaotic scene. He put the cameraman in a headlock, sending the poor guy straight to the hospital. The victim left with bruises, and Andre left facing assault charges later that month. It was definitely a heavy moment for the sport. Eventually, a jury cleared him of assault, but slapped him with a criminal mischief verdict for the broken gear. Civil suits flew back and forth, but eventually everyone settled out of court to keep it quiet. That night in Iowa remains the ultimate example of the big man reaching his breaking point. It's a story that humanizes the myth, showing what happens when he lost control and faced the music. That grainy mugshot of Andre staring calmly down the lens is unforgettable. It's a reminder that everyone has a limit. Please hit that like button so more fans can discover these untold stories. Those were 5 wild moments where the famously gentle giant let his temper loose. It's clear that every outburst happened because someone violated Andre's strict code of honor. He stood up for what he believed in, and that integrity is a huge part of his enduring legacy. That's the story of the legend who lived by his own rules. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe for more.